Okay, this is my persuasive speech. This is my audience of 5, kind of last minute. You got it going?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Oh, okay.
Alright, title. What do you say?
Hi, my name is William Brewer. I'm going to be speaking to you just briefly on homeschooling. Perhaps you've considered homeschooling before, but haven't yet been persuaded to make the switch. Well, I'd like to convince you that homeschooling is an excellent way to provide an education to your family. So to begin with, let's look at the options you have available, which is pretty much public school, private school, and homeschool. But before we look at our options, we need to establish 3 guiding principles upon which my argument rests. And first principle is wisdom. The Bible says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If you do not have it as a foundation, the fear of the Lord, much of what I'm going to say is going to just fall on deaf ears. The next principle we have is high value on children. I love the attitude that Cornelia had towards her children. Cornelia is a woman found in ancient Latin literature, and she's remembered as the perfect example of a virtuous woman. Once again, a guest came to her, and after showing Cornelia her beautiful jewelry, Cornelia placed her hands on her children and responded to her, "These are my jewels." Lastly, love is needed and has to be at the very bedrock of your decision and motivation to homeschool. One of the reasons that I say this is that homeschooling can be a real challenge at times and requires great perseverance and selflessness. The Bible says that love suffers long. It says it doesn't seek its own. In order to make homeschooling a success, you must be motivated by love. So let's look at a moment at public schools. What's wrong with sending your children off to public schools? Okay, before I criticize public schools, I'd like to acknowledge that many fine Christians do send their children to public school. Some people are single parents, and really they don't have another option. Not only do the public schools provide education for their children, but also provides daycare for their children, a form of daycare for their children while they're at work providing for the family. The other thing is some parents just simply haven't been exposed to homeschooling and aren't yet convinced that it's a viable source of education for their family. And finally, some parents see public school as a great opportunity and field for evangelism for their children, which is a noble sounding endeavor, and I applaud the kids that truly do carry out that calling, but I would just question the wisdom for many children, as children aren't really grounded very well in the Word at a young age. And I would just raise the concern with the immense amount of evil and evil influences with public schools and what you're exposing your child to. You hear it commonly, drugs and alcohol, fornication, immorality, obscene music. These are the kind of things. And yes, your child smoking pot, that's a bad thing, yeah. But I think what's commonly overlooked and what's a worse thing that comes out of the public school environment is your kids making the wrong friends, making friends with the wrong ideology, and that's really the thing that rubs off on them, and that you really are going to want to. The more important thing to guard from is the ideology that you're allowing your child to potentially make all kinds of close friendships with really people you have no control. You have hardly any control or knowledge of who your children are hanging out with. Furthermore, you're entrusting your children to adults and teachers who you don't know anything about, and it's with a good portion of their awake hours as children. If you haven't noticed it, public schools are also using this anti-bullying campaign and really they're piggybacking in an ideology and a teaching of the moral acceptance of alternative lifestyles. These are the kind of things that you're up against with sending your child off to public schools. So my question for you is this: Are you guarding your children as though they were the most precious and important thing to you, and are you neglecting the responsibility and commandment that we've received for parents to bring up your children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord? The Bible warns us that a child left to his own brings their mother to shame. And I think that's what we end up finding with public schools, that children for the most part being left to their own. But some parents turn to private schools as an alternative for their children. And I would agree that private schools can be a great thing, but for many parents, private schools just are not an affordable option. For example, if we look at the 6th grade tuition for several private schools, we'll quickly see that the price range just isn't feasible. For Victory Christian Academy, for instance, we find that to send your first child, there is $6,000. If you have a second child, price is reduced, $5,000. Third child is $4,000. Fourth child is only $1,000, which sounds pretty good. But if you do have 4 children, you're looking at $16,000 for annual tuition, and that doesn't include other things like books and stuff. And those are rough numbers. It's actually a little different, but that's about it, rounded. And Metro Christian Academy, much higher, $9,000 for your first child, and then it goes down $1,000 for the next child, and so forth, till you get down to $6,000, and it stays steady at $6,000. So, you got 4 children, you're looking at $31,000, somewhere around that price. Really, just too much of a burden for most parents, most families. So there are cheaper private schools out there, but they don't all have the same level of supervision and screening as the more expensive private schools. I went to a private school for a year, and it just seemed like a lot of the students that were there because they had been kicked out of the public schools, and so their parents were using the private schools as an alternative form of education for them. But the environment certainly wasn't that much different than wasn't that much different from a public school. However, I think the very best choice is homeschooling. The possibilities are endless with homeschool. The resources that homeschoolers today have available to them are just phenomenal. With the arrival of the internet and sites like Wikipedia, Khan Academy, YouTube, and countless others, a homeschool mom has all the best teachers and resources available to her right at her fingertips. There's no lack of information available on the internet. Additionally, with interlibrary loans, nearly all the great courses are available, as well as any great piece of literature. Coursework for homeschooling is about $300 on average per student. Very reasonably priced. This is just a fraction of what you'd end up paying if you were to go the private school route. Homeschooling allows the parents to customize the pace at which they're teaching their child, so they can slow down and double up in areas where the child is struggling, and they can speed up and just progress at a much faster rate and go much further in areas where the child excels. My sister-in-law was explaining to me how that when she was in the public school system, she felt like there was just no time for one-on-one attention from the teacher. She said by the time you get to middle school, a teacher may have 6 different classes and 20 to 30 students per class, which is about 150 students that the teacher interacts with on it every day. But by high school, it can be as many as 270 students that a teacher will see every day. But she felt that if a student needed one-on-one attention, they were perceived by they were perceived as a nuisance by the teacher just because of the time it took away from the class. But with homeschool, you have plenty of flexibility and time to devote to your children on a one-on-one basis. You are able really to know exactly where your child is at, and help them out on a one-on-one basis all the time, and make sure that they really understand the subjects. Homeschooling allows you much greater opportunity to field trips and take advantage of alternative learning techniques as well. Often people criticize homeschooling because it doesn't provide the development of social skills, but this doesn't have to be the case. The solution is simple. Get involved with support groups and homeschool groups in your area. There are many out there. There are even resources on the Oklahoma government website for homeschool groups. Get more involved in your church activities. Between homeschool groups and full-time participation in the church, there'll be no lack of interaction with other kids their age, and they'll be able to develop those good social skills. By homeschooling your child, the father can be off working and providing for his children, and the mother can be at home providing one-on-one attention to their children and ensuring that they receive a great quality education and are shielded from all the evils of the public school system. So I'd like to encourage you guys to make the switch, if you haven't already, to homeschool your children. Thank you.
Did you get pictures of all of this?
Yeah, he already did.